Greetings, and today I have another deck video for you guys. So before I get started, if this is your first time here, I like to make Gwent videos, but I also like to make some variety content here and there. So if that's your kind of thing, do subscribe to the channel. It would be greatly appreciated. So for today's deck, we have a status Nilfgaard deck, and honestly, this deck actually has been pretty good. I'm still sort of trying to learn sort of the full potential of this deck and sort of what I can do with it, or what I can do with it. But this deck actually is pretty good because of two things. One, you got plenty of boost engines that actually support your status inflicting cards, and two, you got status inflicting cards that can either destroy units or disrupt them, so preventing their abilities to work. So I will be using Tactical Decision as the hero power for this particular deck, and we'll just go down the list as always. My apologies for not having posted gameplay video in a while. It's been really, like, I mostly just play games when I'm on stream nowadays. Like, I try to play off stream, but it's like, you know, I try to make time for other things as well. So it's been kind of tough. But I'm making sure to play like at least 4 to 5 times a week for Gwent, at least 3 hours. So I think that should be enough to sort of get me to learn, you know, the new meta and like what kind of decks I'll be expecting from here. So first off, we're playing with a scenario card here, Masquerade Ball, and this deck is super good for status decks just like this one, because the moment you play it, you bring out a Thirsty Dame, and what the Thirsty Dame does is it gets boosted by 1 every time one of any enemy unit is hit with an inflicted status, and that counts for spies as well. So if you were to play your Duchess's Informant, it's an instant spy. So if you have any Thirsty Dames on the board, that's going to be an instant hit. So, and every time you play an Aristocrat, you can summon 2 Fangs of the Empire in succession, so you can instantly kill a unit there, or you can mass spread and just start mass hitting all the poison units. I would suggest waiting and hitting either their engines or their tall units, because poison gives off a lot of power, not to mention you get plus X equal to the amount of Thirsty Dames that you have on the board. So if you have like 3 Thirsty Dames, it's plus 3, 2 is 2, 1 is 1, etc. You kind of get the point. So Masquerade Bull works with that. Now, for it being such an expensive card, it's a pretty big deal if it actually gets destroyed by artifact removal, and you're gonna see that there's actually gonna be quite the amount of artifact removals on certain decks. Like, you're gonna see cards playing like such as False Siri from Nilfgaard, Dancing Star, you know, and you kind of get the idea there. You notice that my 2 most expensive cards here are actually super expensive, because I've thought of making sort of a plan B in case Masquerade Ball does end up getting destroyed, and that's where Portal comes into play. So Portal is good for you to be able to summon your Master of Disguises, because not only is this poison, but you also got a lock with it. So the Master of Disguise boosts by 1 every time there's a locked enemy unit on the field, so it's just continuous boosting. Of course, it can get purified, but the thing is, there's not enough purify units to go around to take care of all of the status units all the status effects that you're gonna send to your opponent's field. So it's gonna get pretty insane. It's gonna get pretty status field on your opponent's side of the field. So Portal is good for that. You want to be careful not to draw both Fangs of the Empire from Portal, otherwise you just get a useless 8-point Portal when you can just get a 6+, you know, the amount of turns that it stays on the board for Master of Disguise. So you want to be able to make sure that you get Master of Disguise out. And another good thing with this deck is, because you're using cards like Tactical Decision, Portal, Roderick of Tyne, and Matahuri, it's actually pretty easy to thin your deck out very well with this. So it's pretty nice that you're almost guaranteed to get all of the cards that you want out from this deck. Next, you got Vincent van Morlehem. You have a choice here, and I almost made this choice. Is you can either choose Vincent, actually, or you can choose, where is he? Where's Atra? Or you can choose, sorry, not Atra, Vatier. So you can either choose to play Vincent or Vatier, and both have their strengths. Vincent is good for just straight up removal if you want to remove the locked unit. Atra is good if you want to seize units. So in terms of power swing, I think Vincent actually... No, I actually think Vatier is more powerful, because let's say you manage to lock like a 12-unit card, right? You play Vatier, it's a 24-point swing because they lose 12 and you gain 12, and it's plus 3. So that's a 27-point card, actually. It's super strong. And to your opponent's eyes, it's like, it's not going to matter, right? Because they don't like they're like, how come you locked like a 12 power unit that doesn't have an ability? Like it would make no sense in their head, but in your head it makes a lot of sense to play WHATS. The only downside to this is it's an order ability, so it might not stay on the field long enough for its ability to work. So I just went sort of with the lower power but more consistent Vincent. So I just chose Vincent here. Even destroying a card that's pretty strong, like let's say, same example, if you lock a 12 power unit and destroy it with Vincent, you do get an 18-point swing, which is still super high. There is no need to go greedy if there is a chance to fail. This one, no chance to fail as long as they don't purify it. So you should be okay with this. Next is Yennefer's Invocation. I like to use Yennefer's Invocation sort of as a way to, as a plan B of sorts in case Vincent doesn't work out for some reason, because like if you try to lock like a high power unit and they purify it, then Vincent probably might not get the full power swing that you might want it to have. So Yennefer's Invocation is a pretty decent sort of backup for that. Not to mention you can combo it with Tactical Decision if you do decide to sort of use your opponent's own powerful card against them. Of course, that falls sort of fit in line with the Nilfgaard's ability to, you know, disrupt your opponent's decks and be able to use their strongest weapon against them. So that's what Yennefer's Invocation there is for. Matahuri is, you're almost guaranteed to draw Masquerade Ball as long as Matahuri comes out. If you already have Masquerade Ball and you also have Mata, then you draw Portal. And honestly, you guys don't need to worry about sort of optimizing this deck simply because you're able to thin enough. Like I think in most of my games, I'm able to thin my deck down to like 5, 4, or even 3 cards. So it's almost guaranteed that you are gonna get most of your gold cards in play. So you don't need to worry about, you know, not having Mata at all. It's chances that you're probably gonna get her out. And remember, I'm not using Damien, so I don't need to use Tactical Decision twice. If anything, if that happens, I might end up with a dry deck and just not be able to draw from it at all, which is gonna suck. But Matahuri is good for, you know, filling up many missing pieces. Like if you're missing a Portal but you have Masquerade, pick up Portal, and vice versa. So Matahuri is good for that. And it's also 6 power, so it's a pretty big power swing. So that's pretty nice. In my opinion, I think this card should get nerfed a little bit. Like maybe its power should go down to maybe 5. I think 6 might be just a bit too much just because of its capabilities of drawing your highest provision card. I think that's pretty crazy. Next, you got the 3 Witchers. Well, 2 of them here, but I'll cover Ox. This is to guarantee more locks. This is pretty good because Mystic Echo Harmony is still a very powerful deck, and if you can pull off Ox, if you can hyperlock all of their Dryad Fledglings with Ox, then that's 4 Harmony engines that you've just disabled. And even though that's a 16 for them and a 5 for you, down the line it's going to be so beneficial. Like you'll start building up your units quicker without worrying having them getting 4 extra points from their Harmony units. So that's really good to have those Witchers there. Left of Gule is always good for that 9-point power swing. Plus if you need to lock an additional engine or, you know, stuff like that, that's always good. Or if you want to set it up for Vincent, that's also a thing. And you can also set it up for Master of Disguise. So there's a lot of synergy in this deck. I really like it. And Seret is just there honestly for that removal. Honestly, I would use Seret last because I think lock takes a higher priority than damage anyway. It's good to damage it by 4, I suppose. Like if you know for sure it's going to benefit you in the long run, definitely go for it. But in terms of mechanics and synergy, I just think that the locks are more important. So that's just my opinion on it. Philippa is good as a sort of engine for status because it can damage status cards by 2 as opposed to 1. Of course, he becomes a high priority target for those damage output cards, which is totally understandable, but that's okay because you have other engines that can sort of do your work for you. Like I said, you got Thirsty Dames, you got Master of Disguises, and you got Poisons, etc. So you're pretty much set. This is just sort of an extra measure or extra precaution to, you know, guarantee more points against your opponent. Next, you got Van Morlehem's Cupbearer. Now, this card is actually pretty good because A, it's Assimilate. So you can play with like the Duchess's Informants and sort of, again, start using your own opponent's weapon against them. You can also use it with Yennefer's Invocation. And if you do end up playing your opponent's card from your deck to the field using Tactical Decision or maybe Roderick of Tyne or whatever, then there is that as well. So this card's Assimilate has some value, not a lot, but it's enough because it's a 7-for-6 base. You have two cards that can create units. Sorry, you have 3 potentially if you use Yennefer's Invocation to play the card as well afterwards. So it essentially becomes a 9-for-7 with the Assimilate, not to mention its more important ability of either being able to poison or purify. So you could end up in cases where you'll probably play mirror matches against your opponent So if you're playing against another status Nilfgaard, and let's say they try to lock you, let's say you're like our highest unit, you can use the cupbearer to sort of purify it so that they don't either destroy it with Vince or seize it with WHATS or get the benefits from Master of Disguise. Poison is also good because you have a crap ton of units that can poison, so it's just another added measure to just guarantee destroy a unit. So this card is actually really good in this deck. Ox, we sort of already went through. Van Hamar here is interesting because Van Hamar works well with a deck that has quite a bit of lock, but it might also be a problem because if you don't have that much lock and you destroy the one unit that has it, your Master of Disguise is going to lose their benefits. Now, this is where sort of the psychological gameplay comes in because your opponent's probably going to think, oh, it's locked. Why would my opponent try to target it? Van Mahar. Even though it's locked, your opponent's probably going to think that there's probably not much use for it. They might even try to destroy it or consume it, in which case then it could be a problem. But other than that, Van Hamar should be able to do his thing and just wreak havoc. And then the last gold card, of course, is Roderick of Tyne. Now, Roderick of Tyne you can actually sort of come across a struggle with, especially in the early stages of round 1, because you don't want to accidentally draw Masquerade Ball and Portal at the same time, especially if your hand is not well optimized. That's going to be a very big problem. So Roderick of Tyne is one of those cards that you have to be careful with, otherwise it might sort of foil your entire strategy. So you want to be careful of that. Otherwise, Roderick of Tyne again is good if you're comboing it with the First Invocation to take a gold card from your opponent's deck to the top of the, from your opponent's field to the top of the deck and stuff like that. And it's also a spy, so it is a status, so you are boosting your Thirsty Dames, and yeah, so there is that. Next, you got your 2 Rod Tossers. Most of the time, your opponent tries to protect their stronger unit from the Cow's Wrath. But even then, like if your opponent is stuck with like 2 12 power, or let's say 8 or 6 power units, and you put your Cow in between, they can only protect 1, and then you can sort of finish the job with either a Fangs of the Empire and stuff. Now, of course, the Cow can be destroyed by being eaten by a consume unit. It can also be destroyed by a card like Village of Forts, which has happened before, but it's not gonna happen that often. So the Rod Tosser is like, let's say 75 to 85% chance of getting its ability like pulled off. Again, it's the strong cases where self-damage Skellige actually is a good counter to the Cow as well. So, you know, there is that also. Next, I just got 1 unit of Alba Armored Cavalry. It's sort of that redundancy factor, you know, in case, you know, you need to lock another unit. Like you need an extra lock for, let's say, if you have a Van Mahar but no Ox just yet, it's good to have an extra lock around to sort of, you know, pull any combos off that you might still have remaining if you've already depleted your other locks, you know, for more urgent reasons. Next, you got your Thirsty Dames. This is the main status engine for the deck, of course. You want to be able to protect these. Now, they're usually targeted for damage cards, which totally makes sense. They totally should. But again, this is not the only engine you have in your deck. Like I said, you have your Master of Disguises, you have Duchess's Informant if your opponent is running engines that you want to take as well. So there's different ways of you making engines. Not to mention you got the poison to sort of deal heavy damage to your opponents without technically damaging them. So statuses like Shield, Defender, doesn't matter. If it's a target, if it's not damage, it's fine. No big deal. So yeah. Next, you got the Hunting Pack. This is sort of just good for that deck fin. Plus, it works well with status. So, just being able to summon copies of this unit to the deck to the field. Pretty straightforward. Duchess's Informant, as we kind of already went through, sort of using your own opponent's weapon against them. Works with Assimilate for the Cupbearer. And works with Thirsty Dame because it is a spy, so it does count as a status. So, this card actually does way more than just create a unit. Next, you got your base Fangs of the Empire. Just basic, do the poison. Again, if you're combining these with Rod Tosser, then you have the potential to destroy quite the amount of units on your opponent's side of the field with this. You can potentially destroy 2 units, which is pretty cool. The only thing you just gotta watch out for is to make sure that you try not to hit it with Portal. Now, of course, in the off chance where you don't really have a choice, where it's like you have to play Portal and you have like 2 Master of Disguises and 1 Fangs of the Empire, you have to take that 33% chance that it's gonna come out. But if you manage to sort of optimize your hand well enough and make sure that both Fangs of the Empire are in your hand by the 3rd round, then you should be just fine. Unless you're confident to go for that round 2 win and you have both Fangs of the Empire already either played or on your grave or on your hand by round 2. If you're confident, go for it, because the combination of Masquerade Ball and Portal can actually be pretty strong. You're able to get 3 engines, the Thirsty Dame created from Masquerade Ball and both Master of Disguises from Portal. Not to mention, if you start sort of pulling off your abilities, then it's going to get even better from there. And last but not least, of course, is sort of the second main bronze engine for the deck, and that is the Master of Disguise. We kind of already went through it. This card has the capability of locking quite a few units, so you got Master of Disguises from there. So potential weaknesses of this deck really is if you're taking on decks that rely on consume, so monsters, it might have difficulty against monsters because again, it might be able to sort of eat the cards that you try to poison or you try to lock. So you want to be careful of that one. I found that I was not doing so well against Northern Realms Shoop. The thing is, I just gotta sort of play out the deck really well. But the thing is, if I really think about it, it actually does decently well against Shoop. And the reason for this is because even though in the last patch, the Doomed status got removed from the Shoop's Day Off card, it didn't get removed from Shoop himself. So Vincent can still target that 8-point Shoop and create a 14-point swing, which is still a pretty big swing. And your opponent would not try to purify it. They're going to find it a waste of time, and they'd rather use it to purify any status buffs that you might have. So, you know, that's also a potential weakness there. Well, for them, not for us. Another thing is playing against Wildcard Syndicate. Vincent just destroys the heck out of Savola's Frightener because Savola's Frightener has Doomed, and Vincent can just outright destroy it. I played one game where I completely didn't realize I should have destroyed Savola's Frightener, and I lost by 4. And I instead went for a card that was 5 units weaker. 5 power weaker, or 5 points weaker, and I definitely would have won if I just chose the Frightener. So you gotta be careful of those, you know, plays as well, because the fact that status actually got so much support for Nilfgaard actually makes this deck relatively strong. And if gone uncontested, then you'll most likely have like landslide victories. Like most of the victories I got were pretty landslide, which is pretty nice. Another one is if they have artifact removal, then obviously your Masquerade Ball's gonna get destroyed and you're just stuck sort of with a Thirsty Dame as the card that you'll have. But you sort of have Portal there to sort of make up for that. So if you do lose what do you call it, Masquerade Ball, it's not a big deal. You still have Portal and you can still start generating points from your Master of Disguises. So that's sort of the deck list guide explanation for the status Nilfgaard deck. Let me know what your guys' thoughts on it in the comments section below. Leave a like, of course, if you guys enjoyed the video. And other than that, this is Enzo signing out. Oh, so sorry. And subscribe for more Gwent content, of course, and other gaming content as well. And other than that, this is Enzo signing out. I'll catch you guys in the next one.